These are the top 15 defensive linemen in the 2024 NFL Draft. What is going on? It is Alex coming back at you with another video. And today, this is a position group that honestly has a ton of talent. Maybe not the top end guys like the edge class. Feel free to check out that video. But there are a lot of dudes who have a lot of different skill sets. So stay tuned, watch the whole thing, not just because it helps out the algorithm, which of course you could do that by dropping a like, feeling free to sub to the channel, but also there's actually just a crazy amount of different personalities and just different overall skill sets in this class that, you know, they're worth mentioning, and definitely going to be talking about that. But before we start kicking off, I have to mention Maason Smith. He literally tore his ACL while celebrating in the first game, and I think it was after his first rep last year. So I, as you guys know, am completely transparent about my reviews. I don't want to give you guys a scouting report based on something before an ACL tear. That's just me. I want to wait, but I know he's going to be probably in the top of this list. Unbelievable talent. I have seen his play before, but I owe it to you guys to give you who he is now and not what he was before. So just had to mention that right there. But starting off with my number one overall interior defensive lineman, it is Leonard Taylor. I'm a big fan of this guy. My one main issue with him is that he gets gassed really easily. I think conditioning is one of those things I am going to be more concerned about him overall, which is why his athleticism is a C. For you guys who are kind of used to being in school and maybe overachievers, you see anything below an A is probably bad, or anything below a B. That's not the case. I'm a pain in the ass grader. You'll see that a lot of these guys are going to be having C's all over the place. This is my number one guy, and he has C's, okay? That's just what's going to happen. And a lot of guys from these drafts don't last in the NFL, so I feel very confident with the fact that I'm going to give a lot more credit to the A's, and then heavily more so have the guys majority of the time having C's and below. So I have to just shout that out right there, because it seems like, hey, this is your number one guy and he has already a D grade. High missed tackle percentage, over 20%. That, to me, that's automatically going to be putting you into that D territory. You know, if you just want a relative range, 10% and under is definitely going to be in that B to A range. And then, you know, 10 to 15, probably going to be that lower B to C range. 15 and up to 20, probably the low C. And then beyond that, I already have it all worked out anyways, but just to give you guys off the top of my head how it goes, that's usually how it goes. So tackling is probably not going to be very high for any of these players. IQ. So for me, that is a stat of, do you know what's going on the field? A lot of defensive interior players don't. That's just the plain truth. I know a lot of these defensive linemen, and this has been the same year after year, just don't process very well. And I want to give credit to those who do. Leonard Taylor is one of those guys who's very, very smart. He is arguably the best player on the field when he's going 100%. I've seen him get taken out a little too much for my liking, but this guy is an absolute beast. He has really good length, and he uses it very, very well. So that's that length that's used category. Versatility is more so of a grade, basically saying, like, can I, like, in certain situations, can I put you over the nose if I need to? Can I put you as, like, an edge defender randomly if I need to? Like, can you not just have one solidified role for him? That's going to be the versatility category. Frame is based on height and weight, which I want my guys to be 310 plus. So B is a very, very good grade. Like 300 to 305 dropped it down a little bit, but still, again, B is very, very good grade. But this guy is one of the best at disengaging from contact that I've ever seen. You know, you just get to see the lineman go and just try to grab him, and he's just using hand technique. One of my favorite things is seeing guys, like we'll talk about next with JerZhan Newton, hand technique. Can you get those hands off of you? Because NFL players are really good with their hand placement. They know where to grab as well. So if you're constantly whacking their hands away, it's going to make, like, your life a lot easier, but their life a hell of a lot harder. So I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Really damn good block shedder. Just somebody that you cannot get your hands on, especially when he's going 100%. You know, one of those guys where if he is able to remain consistently healthy and consistently energetic, like if he's more in shape, so to speak, and he's already in great shape, but, you know, maybe if he turns that little pooch into a six-pack, then this guy might be a top 5 interior defensive lineman in the NFL. He has that level of talent. So looking at his overall, I think he'll end up going into the top 20 because of the fact that, one, his talent is great, but two, overall, I just don't really feel like he brings the down-to-down consistency required of somebody who might be going above that. But you're looking at teams like the Lions, they're still looking for that god-tier interior defensive lineman. That's just my personal opinion. I like Alim McNeill, but Broderick Martin didn't do it for me, and we were all talking about potentially Kancey for them in the first round. Still think that's a very good target to go after. The Rams need everything, so unfortunately, they're going to be featured on this pretty heavily. And then I still think Seattle. I mean, Seattle might be my dream location for him. It's just a spot where he could totally come in, play interior defensive lineman, and like kick absolute ass. And he doesn't really need to perform at the highest level down by down because you have so many good players around you. Seattle is one of those teams that's going to also be featured pretty heavily because I see them as an almost complete roster with maybe needing help in the long run at linebacker and then defensive interior on the defense. So I do think that there's certainly going to be an aspect of that for sure. But Leonard Taylor is one of those better players that, like, when I can see him getting into the groove, maybe being a little bit more conditioned, he's going to be a every down starter. He's definitely going to be probably a top 15 defensive tackle coming into the league. And that's a very bold statement, but his talent, like, I don't give A pluses to nobodies. Like, these guys actually deserve it because they cannot be consistently blocked. They cannot be controlled by the guy who's blocking them. So, he was on my watch list before because I have just a watch list where I'm watching a game and I see a guy play and I just write his name down. This guy has been featured on it many times, and, finally being able to dive into the tape, it certainly is worth it. Next, we got JerZhan Newton here. I love JerZhan. You guys have known that. I've been a big advocate of JerZhan Newton for the past year now. Just somebody where it's weird because he will run as fast as arguably a running back in a straight line at 300 pounds. And it is ridiculous how fast he can accelerate. Doesn't get off the line that fast, but when he is moving, his acceleration to top speed is god tier, and he has a really good top speed. Another one of those guys who's going to get that A+ in the block shedding because his hand technique is so damn good. And most of the time, you'll be seeing guys do a lot of swim moves and stuff like that. To me, that might just be, how we all guys have a type, all girls have a type. That's going to be my type in terms of looking for interior defensive linemen. I love guys that just pause. I love players that are able to continue to get the hands off of them, because when an offensive lineman controls you, they're in control of that situation and you aren't, and he makes sure that he is in the best position. This guy is an absolute monster. I think that he doesn't get that initial push that I'm wanting. There's a lot of times where he doesn't get the proper leverage, so he can't push the lineman backward. And I like defensive interiors that can collapse the pocket. We're going to talk about guys pretty soon that are experts at pushing the pocket. And JerZhan just doesn't do that. He's going to be the guy to disengage and take the gap, and he's going to create pressure that way. But honestly, he's such a good player overall. There's not much I can say that's negative about him except that. Again, he's 295 pounds, so I kind of wish he was, more 305, 310. But he uses his size very well. They use him as an edge rusher at points. D'Amico Ryans is a name I'm going to throw in there as someone who I would love to coach him. Bill Belichick as well, but Bill doesn't really need defensive interior this early, so I'm not going to be putting him probably anywhere on this list. But, there are some defensive interior guys where I'm like, man, if Bill Belichick could just work with this guy for one offseason, shit would be great. So JerZhan, I just think that his skill, he's already really polished as a technician. Now it's more so getting the leverage down and being able to push the offensive lineman back and then comboing it with a move. Because that's kind of the key. A lot of these defensive interior players do not have that natural instinct. I'll talk about MEKHI Wingo in a little bit, but that's a perfect example of a guy where I'm seeing him engage in a move, but then I don't see him create the combo from it. It's like, hey, you have the leverage. The guy is already on his heels. Now you can do your move and then go ahead. And you see him do it 2 seconds later. And it's like, come on, dude. You got to get comfortable with your timing. A lot of guys don't have that. JerZhan Newton does have that timing. He just doesn't have that initial push that he really needs to get that leverage. So that's his big issue. But overall, a really good player and well-deserving of a roster spot. I feel like it's going to be very boom or bust whether it continues in the NFL because it's so technique-based and not necessarily pure athleticism-based. We'll see how it goes, though. Next, we got Kris Jenkins. Yeah, this guy did not see being anywhere close to my top 3, and he's well-deserving of it. He does not play like he's 285. As you can see, he has a higher impact than I believe both. He has the same thing as Leonard Taylor, but he is higher than JerZhan Newton, who is 10 pounds heavier than him. And just somebody, I talk about a lot of these players who are around like 300 pounds where they don't have enough push. This guy plays heavier than they do. So it's really good to see that somebody can use proper leverage, has really good upper arm strength, but still keeps the feet going. Just overall an amazing player. Again, the only issue with him really was the frame. So if the frame is a 5-point category, if you guys don't know, it is in, order of importance here from pass rush all the way down to frame. So frame's a 5-point category. If it's a D, it's probably in that 3 range. So, with 2 points more, he is actually potentially better than JerZhan Newton. So it's the frame that really set him at number 3. IQ, damn it, I forgot to edit the damn C to a different color. But he sometimes does get lost. Like, players do get lost. C+ is still very solid. He'll still recognize when the run's coming his way. He'll still be able to maybe pick up on a screen, but it's much later than a guy who will have a B or like a B-. There is a significant drop-off per tier, but Kris Jenkins, obviously not useless on the field. He can still process, just maybe a little bit slower than some of these other players. But overall, like, his talent is through the roof. I really trust him overall, somebody who I really want on my team. Unfortunately, I ended up recommending the freaking Baltimore Ravens, who are my Steelers rivals, as one of those spots. Again, the Rams, because they need everything, and then the Texans, because DeMeco. I mean, they're used to having some good interior defensive linemen there in San Fran. I think that he could definitely use it as well. But there's not anything that's actually wrong with Kris besides his weight. And that's incredible, because he really does play like a 300-pounder. One of my favorite players in the draft, pound for pound. I think that he'll end up going outside the first round because of that size issue. But, he doesn't even have the craziest length of arms, especially you can look at it based on that picture. But he uses his length really, really well. So he maximizes his capabilities. If you want a day one starter, this is probably going to be the guy for you. And, you're going to get him at a really good value. So I'm very excited to see what he's going to be able to do this year. And it's weird because I'm also an Ohio State fan. Here I am rooting for a Michigan guy and putting him over 2 Ohio State defensive interior linemen. Then you got Ruke Orhorhoro. So this guy is the definition of balanced. He's just a really good technician overall. He's a very good athlete. He just might not have, he's a jack of all trades. And honestly, it's getting close to master of all trades, but we're not there yet. So he's going to be here because, one, again, he has an okay frame. He's sub 300 pounds. He also plays kind of like an edge rusher, but also he does lack that on-field processing. He's around that same level as Kris Jenkins, as you guys get to see. And he does have shorter arms. That is going to drop his grade a little bit overall. I don't feel like he uses his length to his advantage. I feel like when he makes contact with, especially offensive tackles, he is going to be more so using his shoulder as a battering ram rather than making contact with his hands and then maybe using your shoulder as an extra piece of you as part of a combo move. There was another issue with him, again, very similar to a lot of these other players. He sometimes doesn't combo his moves properly. He'll get the leverage and doesn't time it right. That's something that will happen with time. But that's also why, I still have a very high grade on him. Like, this is a first-round quality grade, and I'm giving it to him. And I'm saying he's going to go in round 2 probably. But just like a really good athlete, I would love to see him be able to actually use athleticism and be kind of like that Kancey, jump the gap, so to speak, for a team like Arizona and LA Chargers, who, both those teams are still looking for defensive interior years after they started needing it. But overall, this guy is just the definition of consistency. Just needs to get more comfortable using his full length. And sometimes that's not very easy when you're continuing to bounce between D tackle and edge rusher. So, I think in time, there'll definitely be something he can definitely improve on. But for now, I'm just going to tell you how it is. I'm very excited to see where I'll be moving up and down these scores as the year progresses. Next, we got McKinley Jackson. So this guy is pretty much, so he's talking about gap penetrator. This guy's a gap penetrator to almost his own detriment. So he doesn't do a very good job when it comes to pushing the offensive lineman on a consistent basis. He does get moved around a lot in the run game, which is surprising for 320 pounds. But this guy's get off is ridiculous at points. Again, inconsistency makes me put it at a B, but you will see this guy jump through a gap faster than Kancey did, and Kalijah is known for his gap jumping ability. I think he gets ahead of himself very quickly, and that's why he sometimes is found on the ground. I don't think that his mind always processes as fast as his feet do, but he still is a very smart player. He knows what's going on around him, but maybe he doesn't have that body control yet. Does that mean he never will? No. I think he definitely can, and, based on how his play was, I mean, you see the score. It's damn near, you could round it up to a 75. It is a fringe first round grade. This guy is an absolute baller. He was also on Broshmo's breakouts list. I already have him as a breakout player because I really like him. But I think he's going to be a good third round pick for teams that are looking for maybe someone to sit behind a veteran for a year. For example, the Steelers with Cam Hayward. I think this would be a great guy to continue sitting. And then we don't know how long Larry Ogunjobi is going to be there. So, again, C means that's probably going to be in that fifth. I think it might have been 18% missed tackle rate over his career. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure it's McKinley Jackson. It was like 30%, then 20%, and then now like 11%. So I have to give him some credit there. One of these edge rushers or one of these defensive interiors, I know for a fact, is on that progression. But tackling, nonetheless, is not his necessary forte. But this guy has some very unique abilities at that size. Definitely going to be something that teams will covet. And I think that in year 2, year 3 of his career, when he continues polishing up and being able to understand how his body works and being able to get better at his balance, this guy could certainly be a starter in the NFL. And I'm not one who likes to make hyperbolic statements like, he will be a starter, but I think that this guy certainly can be. When he's going, I think an issue I also had with him is ferocity. Like, there was a lot of times where he would kind of play patty cake, and like when he actually went in and just like tried to absolutely be a bull in a china shop, this guy was the best player on the field. Like, you could see it. Your eyes didn't even need to know what number he was. You would just instantly track to him. It's like, holy crap, that guy's balling out. There are some lines in my own scouting report that said WTF, because it doesn't make sense for someone who's 325 pounds to be moving the way he does. I just think that sometimes it's really hard for the body to handle moving at that type of speed, that quickness, when you are at 325 pounds. So overall, great. I don't think his top speed is necessarily incredible, and I don't feel like overall his pure athletic build is through the roof, but that get off is ridiculous for his size. Great player nonetheless. Then you got DONTAY CORLEONE out of Cincinnati. So first rep I saw this guy, he just absolutely drove the center into the quarterback, and I was like, holy crap, here we go. I've seen DONTAY a couple times in person since I go to SMU, and he is a very good player. My issue with him is consistency. There's just a lot of times where I don't feel like he gets his feet moving enough, and it doesn't lead to the pressure that I know he can generate. I think that's one of his biggest flaws for sure. Again, another one of those guys who is a block shedding technician. You are not going to be holding on to this guy when he doesn't want you to be holding on to him. I think the big issue with him was primarily consistency, and that's something that could certainly improve. I'm pretty sure DONTAY was the one where I mentioned Bill Belichick in my scouting report. I was like, please just give this guy to Bill. Obviously, there you go. You can add an extra dream fit. Don't take it too seriously. It's just there for fun more than anything. But this guy was an absolute menace as well in the run game. So got to give him some credit there. You just got to see him be someone who could take over the field. I didn't see the consistency when it came to, I remember the guard for USF was significantly more effective on DONTAY than the center was. That was something that concerned me. I watched the SMU game, and our center got absolutely shellacked in the same exact way. But DONTAY, it's actually interesting because I'll talk about, I think, the next player on this. It was almost the exact opposite. DONTAY could really cause problems when you're squared up to him. He will drive you back. He will use his full length. But the moment you're not completely square with him, not necessarily going to be the most effective player. This next guy, however, in T'Vondre Sweat, that guy, when you give him a little bit of shoulder angle, you're done. This guy moves like he's 320 pounds, but he's 355. He might even move like he's 300 at 355. And you can tell who he is on the field. By the way, Moro Jomo, I didn't give that guy enough credit. I mean, he started popping off too. But, you see that weight, 355. He is a menace on the field. You will be able to see him jump gaps pretty much better than most of the guys I mentioned before. And I like a lot of the guys I mentioned before. But this guy at 355 is able to jump gaps at an extremely elite level, especially for his size, because he's able to take very good advantage, or he's able to take advantage of when an offensive lineman gives them their shoulder. When he is squared up to them, it's not nearly as effective. And I think that comes a lot down to his legs not always driving the whole play. Same thing with DONTAY CORLEONE. There's just a lot of plays where it's like, get your drive going, like get your legs moving, man, and get a little bit lower. I feel like T'Vondre and DONTAY both kind of suffer from that. They just need to get a little bit lower and a little bit more comfortable. 355, it's not very easy to remain low because, just like I was talking about McKinley, gravity works, right? The gravity exists. You're going to probably stumble and eat shit if you're going to continue doing that constantly. I think that that's something that is an intricacy that can work over time. But T'Vondre is someone who has really high level hand technique as well. I got to see him do plenty of power to swim moves, which was awesome to see a 355-pound man just absolutely throw a guard out of the way. And this is against guys like Steve Avila as well. These are high-level offensive linemen. I don't watch the gimme games. I think those are crap. But, T'Vondre, when he gets an angle or when he gets under your pad level, this guy is unstoppable. He really is. And I think that he's going to be absolutely incredible at the NFL level. The only issue with me for him that I haven't mentioned yet is kind of his conditioning, because they're in such a heavy rotation that I didn't really get to see him for like 2 or 3 straight drives. That's something that could become a problem, but without Moro Jomo as well as Keandre Coburn, you are going to be able to potentially see him in a more prime role, because he is still listed as a starter. He was still listed as the starter, but he still took plenty of time off. So definitely worrisome there. He has very long arms, and that's something I love about him as well. He uses it to its full advantage. And I think there was an edge rep that he did too. And he did a pretty damn good job. So got to give him credit there. But, he's 355. He's not going to be playing edge rep anytime soon. But hell, if you just need to be like YOLOing it and just making sure that, we just want another big guy on the edge. Maybe in goal line, you're like, screw it, we have enough big dudes. We'll have him there in case they run a power to the outside. This could be your guy for sure. But looking at teams like Seattle, again, having someone who can plug up the nose, especially, that'd be great. The Raiders still figuring out their defensive line problems. LA. So, again, this guy is an absolute freak show. And he's super exciting to watch. So definitely keep your eyes out for this dude. He was my last scouting report as well, because I wanted to just make sure. And I fell in love with him. He's a really fun player. And at that size, there's no one in this class who comes close to having that skill set at that size. Could end up going in the top 64 if a team like Seattle is just saying, hey, we have one more hole to fill, and this guy's worth a 3rd-round pick. Let's just send a 2nd on him. I'd really support that, honestly, because he is that unique of a player. You don't find many who can play of that size like that. Now we have TYLEIK Williams, who used to be way higher. I think he was my number 5. So I dropped him 3 spots when I studied a couple more guys. And that's not because he's bad. He's a great player. He's just kind of, he's on the fringe of being really good. I could just tell he's 10% away. Someone who I'm going to still bet on for sure. He's no longer going to be in my top 32, but he was actually in my top 32 because I'm projecting him to end up raising up to around 75 this year, because I think that the IQ is going to improve. I think his impact's going to continue improving, because I feel like he's going to get a lot more comfortable in his own body. But he did end up adding, it says 5 extra pounds, but Broshmo was talking to me. I think he heard a report about 330. We don't know yet. Obviously, we'll see. But even at 320 pounds, he still added a little bit of weight, so that could help at that impact spot. But he already moves like he's 300 pounds. Another guy who's very athletic for his size. Very excited to see what TYLEIK's going to be doing, because he is one of the better athletes in this class overall. He's very fast in a straight line as well. So, he's going to be one of those projects. I don't think he's going to start out as a top-tier NFL player, But I don't think that's a bad thing. I could see a team that has a solidified defensive line who kind of needs one more dude to fill it, being perfectly fine with him performing at the way that they normally do, and then just having him continue to get better and better to the point where they never need to worry about that position again. Again, like the Lions, the Seahawks, and then the Rams, they have all the time in the world. But, this guy really does have unreal raw power and unreal potential. The issue is, again, that polish. I don't really get to see him processing on the field well enough. That's where that IQ grade comes in. He looks lost a lot of the times. When players run right by him and he doesn't know it, I'm going to call that out. Does that change over time? Yes. And I think that a lot of times I'm wishing these guys would, again, combo their moves. You are pushing an offensive lineman, do a move. You're doing a move and you have a little bit of room now. Now pop with your hands and get the offensive lineman out of his anchor. Do something to keep them on their toes. And make sure that they are not controlling the engagement. Make sure that you are. TYLEIK has that potential. Hasn't hit it just yet, but I feel like he might. And that's one of the guys who I might bet on and someone who will end up hitting their potential. Hence why I have him still as a round 2 player. Next, we have MEKHI WINGO. I don't know what's up with this dude, but he plays patty cake with the offensive lineman, and he's so twitchy. He's a great athlete overall. Like, his get off is awesome. And, you can even see him taking some edge reps in there, uses his length well, but it's incredible the fact that he has all of these moves and everything, but he doesn't move forward. Like, you will see him try to do this all within 1 yard. I'm like, my guy, these offensive linemen are not like standing pillars. Like, you can move them, my friend. Move forward. And there's a couple reps where you see that and you're like, why haven't you continued doing that? Like, why are you still basically being, oh, okay, my bad. Like, come on, dude. You can't just jump a gap and be just a gap penetrator. You have to push the offensive lineman. You have to take advantage of their leverage. I feel like MEKHI WINGO did not do a very good job of that at all. He does a great job getting off blocks. He has very good hand technique. But when it comes to having to be a beast, he does not do it. And that is a shame because he has all the potential in the world. He's a great athlete and he's a technician. That's kind of the foundation that you need. Now, there were times where the running back would go right by him. And not a huge fan of that. But he's not a dumbass. He has better processing than some other guys I've already mentioned before. But I think overall, MEKHI WINGO is going to be somebody that if he instills the confidence to push forward and then combo his moves because he has the technique, then he's going to be someone who can rise up the list. But it's that mental block of, I am not going to move forward. That's the big issue. Like, you have to actually impact the play. Quarterbacks throw the ball within 3 seconds. You have to push the pocket. And he doesn't do that. But I think that's something that is more mental and not necessarily a physical limitation. So that's something where if he just randomly snaps and is like, okay, well, I'm going to push forward, this could totally change. I could instantly put that to a B. This guy rises up the list. So very excited to see him do that because I'm rooting for him, but have to just call it as it is. Tyler Davis is somebody who I used to put in my first round mock drafts. And my God, the more I watched him, the more depressed I got. Just, he has some really good reps in there for sure. But, I just don't know what he is, kind of like that jack of all trades, but really master of absolutely nothing. He's a secure tackler. That's good. He does have a low percentage missed tackle rate. I think it's probably around that 6%, 5%. So that's really good. Like, he's going to make the tackle. But he's not necessarily the guy who's going to be chasing you down the way I thought he did. I was a very big Tyler Davis fan. But just the more I watched him, the less I liked him. And it's really unfortunate. But when I watched other defensive interiors, maybe it makes me feel worse about this last draft in terms of their interior talent, because I used to have Tyler Davis graded pretty favorably, but when looking at this class, he's significantly worse. Now, I watched other games, so he might have just performed much worse, but I checked out to make sure on PFF I wasn't watching the worst of the worst games, and I wasn't. So he just naturally doesn't perform at the level that some of these other guys do. That's just the truth. But good for him for being a secure tackler. I just don't really think he's necessarily incredible. But, there are teams that are looking for interior line depth. So those are the teams I'm going to mention. Just overall, not somebody, like someone who kind of broke my heart, because Tyler Davis was going to be one of my dudes. And I'll talk about another one of my guys who actually broke my heart, who I just shouted out on Twitter before I did his official scouting report. So, going to be excited to talk about that. Michael Hall Jr., a lot of people think he'll be a first round or top 20 talent. I'm not there yet. Good for him for being able to use the majority of his length, but, he's a smaller guy, sub 300, going to naturally call it as I see it. I don't really think he's a great athlete. I feel like when I was watching TYLEIK Williams, you could convince me that Michael Hall was the 315-pound guy in terms of athleticism, and that TYLEIK was the 292, just based on how much more athletic TYLEIK looks. So I have to call that out there. And then, again, when you're that small, it's very hard to generate that type of impact. Kris Jenkins is kind of a unique freak in that aspect, and he has, I think it's like a 28%, maybe 25% missed tackle rate. So it is pretty high. Very, very unfortunate overall. But, I just don't really think this guy does anything extremely well, except for use what God gave him, which is length. Because a lot of these defense interiors, they don't have very good length. I'll just tell you that. Definitely going to be talking about one of them later on. But, again, just somebody with a lot of upside. Obviously, this guy was a top-tier talent. He does have some good flashes. But in terms of NFL production, I don't really see it. But, again, still think that he's going to get better, and that could change my mind. So there you go. This is the guy I'm talking about. I gave OMARI a shout out when I was watching Tyler Barron, because OMARI, like on the first play, I was like, holy shit, there we go. OMARI has unbelievable upside. I think that he might be extremely out of shape or extremely lazy. Mari just randomly will stop doing anything. Like, he'll just be absolutely useless. And I had an issue with Jordan Davis having the same thing, where they'll be, mid-rep and just walking on the field. Like, you're taught never be caught walking on the field. Always be active. Always be moving. He doesn't really do very much to try to be an impact on the play, except for those plus plays, which are one probably out of every 10 to 15. And that's very unfortunate. My first time watching Omari Thomas was versus Osiris Torrance. That was his best game. He had 5 pressures, and I think he had a total of like 10 or 11 on the season. So that should just tell you how, in comparison, as a pass rusher, how much better he was in that game. So Omari Thomas, he's kind of like a one-hit wonder for me. But the more I watched him, the more I realized he just doesn't have the grit. And I feel like there's a big motor concern with him. So definitely not going to like that too much. But again, got to give him a shout out because he is 6'4", 320. He does have, those plus reps. It's something you can't deny. But just overall, I don't think he's going to end up starting in the NFL ever. I don't know if he might be a backup. Maybe he's a guy you could target for a practice squad with upside. But I'm hoping he proves me wrong. Again, there's guys like Kingsley Suamataia who end up like losing 15 pounds in the offseason, looking incredible. And there are guys who I'm extremely high on. And I think Omari Thomas, if he ends up getting more in shape, not necessarily losing weight, somebody who I'm totally fine being extremely big fan of. But next, we got JJ PEGUES. I think it's PEGUES. But this guy is a freak show. He is just so damn slow. I mean, like, he's going to rip some dude off of him and absolutely blow up a play. But if the play is not coming directly at this guy, ain't no chance he's going to be doing anything. And it hurts. It really hurts. He also has a really poor missed tackle rate, over 20%. But just one of those guys where it's like, why aren't your feet moving, dude? Here he's a freaking statue. One of those guys where if he ends up actually trying, he could be a legitimate starter in the NFL. But this dude is straight up a statue on the field. And it hurt my heart because this guy looks, he might be a little bit higher on the fat percentage side because he looked as big as Tavondre Sweat 355. And that might be the reason why he has poor get off and he has very poor athleticism. He might just be out of shape. And I don't know. He's a strong ass dude. He has absolutely no leg drive, though. And I'm like, please, for the love of God, do something. And unless the play was coming at him, he didn't. I saw like maybe 1 or 2 reps where I got to see something. And it's like, dude, you're not going to make an impact in the NFL if you can't get to the quarterback. Or the running back's not going to run right at you in the NFL. That's just not going to happen. And that's kind of what he feasted off of. So very unfortunate because I really wanted to like him. He's a very strong player. But, I mean, I just saw how these other interior defensive linemen, I think his number was like 35, had just so much more twitch and so much more excitement, so much more volatility to their game. This guy was the same slow speed and could blow a play up if they ran right at his face. Not a fan of that. But I still think he'll probably go in like early or mid day 3. NAZIR Stackhouse, not a fan either. To me, I have this in my scouting notes, clearly the worst defensive lineman on the field. You could just tell everybody else was better than him. I think he should be a UDFA. I hate to say it, honestly, but that's just the truth. I say projection top 200 because it's just a Georgia Bulldog, but honestly, I probably should have done UDFA. I don't think he's very good remotely. Another one of those guys where they actually do not know how to push an offensive lineman. And it's a shame. It's a big shame because I want these guys to show more of that push and actually, push the pocket. But when you get to see him next to all these amazing athletes, you really get to see that this guy is not NFL caliber. And I hate to say it, and I hope NAZIR proves me wrong. But the things where he's best at is getting off a block, probably because he's not pushing into the guy in the first place. But also he at least knows a little bit what's going on. So got to give him credit for IQ as well as block shedding. It was really unfortunate. And something that I will say is that what I noticed, he's always the last player on the defensive line to get his hand down. He's the last defender to get in position. I don't like that. He always is barely beating the snap at getting down in his stance. And for me, that's not something that I accept. I don't like that. Something I'm going to call out. So, not a fan of that at all. It is what it is. But, I don't think he should be on a team necessarily drafted wise. But I put the Eagles in there because he's a Georgia Bulldog, and that's it. Next, and finally, we have DeWayne Carter. The big issue with this man is that I feel like I have longer arms at 5 feet 9 inches tall than he does at 6'3". He gets outlengthed by everybody. It's kind of weird. Like straight up outlengthed by every single lineman. And you get to see that his best reps are the ones where the offensive lineman doesn't really get their hand on him. That's not going to happen in the NFL. Those offensive linemen aren't NFL worthy. So I got to call it as it is. That's a big issue for me when you cannot make contact with an offensive lineman. He has great pressure numbers, but when you actually watch the tape, it's not because of how he's playing. It's more so based on the fact that the offensive line or the quarterback maybe scrambling to the other side and giving him a free lane. It's mainly because the situation got right for him. And I don't know if that's translatable to the NFL at all, but overall, again, I'm not even talking about the dream fits because I don't really think these guys should be necessarily on a roster. I think there's just better players who are veterans who I think deserve a spot, who have proven themselves, who deserve a contract over, guys who have upside. So that is going to be the video. I know that it ended on a little bit of a somber note, but that's what happens when I have a top 15 and not a top 10. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the far side. Peace.